Chrysler files for an IPO, glowing reviews for the 2014 Cadillac CTS, and will the self-driving revolution be even bigger than we thought? Strap yourselves in, it's time for Motor Money. Hi, I'm Motley Fool analyst Rex Moore. Welcome to another thrilling edition of Motor Money. We are all autos all the time and how it relates to you, the investor. And my co-pilot on this road trip is Motley Fool senior auto analyst John Rosevear, live and in color somewhere from the great state of Massachusetts. And for security reasons, we can't disclose his actual location. John, welcome in. Are you excited? We'll be talking about Cadillacs today.
I'm all excited, and as you know, Cadillac is one of my several dozen favorite automotive brands.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll definitely have a good talk there.
Now,
yeah, I like most cars, it turns out.
Well, we're happy. Our first segment from the show today, headlines from around the auto world this week, and our first headline from the Motley Fool. We've heard of them, and our very own John Rosevear. Huge news actually in the world of autos as Chrysler has filed for an IPO. An initial public offering to take the company public, much like you could buy Ford and General Motors stock, you would be able to buy Chrysler stock. But John, a couple of points here. First, it's not really a done deal, right? There's a little Italian company called Fiat that has a say in this.
This is really best understood as a game of chicken, and the background is basically Chrysler, of course, went through a big package bankruptcy in 2009, part of the Obama administration's auto industry bailout, sort of like GM did. Chrysler came out of bankruptcy essentially with two owners. Fiat, the Italian automaker, which had control, and a trust managed by the UAW. This was a big trust that was set up several years ago before the bankruptcy, basically to pay healthcare, private health insurance for Chrysler's retirees. Ford and GM have these same trusts. The idea was to get it off the automakers' balance sheets. It was a landmark deal at the time. But the bankruptcy court decided to keep this thing funded, that the UAW trust would get some chunk of Chrysler. Right now, Fiat owns 58.5%. This UAW trust owns 41.5%. The UAW trust really wants to sell because the investment managers, want to diversify their portfolio. Fiat really wants to buy so that it can complete the merger with Chrysler and sort of get better synergy and have Fiat have access to Chrysler's cash and resources and so forth. But there's a big dispute over price. And when I say big dispute, what I mean is screaming court battle. The two sides are said to be $1 billion apart. And so this IPO filing is basically the UAW trust forcing the hand, saying, okay, we have the right to sell some of our stock in an IPO. We're going to make you do it. That way we'll know what the price is.
Okay.
So right here we have, we've heard comments all week from Fiat senior managers, CEO Sergio Marchionne, who is CEO of both Fiat and Chrysler, and now today Fiat's chairman coming out and saying, whoa, if Chrysler goes public, the relationship with Fiat might be, out the window. It might not work out for us anymore. And of course, Fiat has really resurrected Chrysler from the dead, so this is a big deal. On the other hand, like I said, it's a game of chicken. They want to talk the price down. The UAW will want to talk the price up. And I think there's a very good chance, an extremely good chance, that we'll get some months down the road toward an IPO. We'll have an idea what the market will pay for it, and these two sides will settle.
Okay.
Well,
if it
and then there won't be an IPO.
If it does come about, if we do have an IPO, I know it's hard to talk about without knowing how the stock would be valued, but would you be interested in Chrysler the stock?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I've bought Ford a while ago and have done really well with it. I bought GM a while ago. I've done well with it. I think both are still buys right now. But with Chrysler is really dependent on this Fiat relationship. And I think the key question would be, what is the shape of this? And, the two companies really need each other. Chrysler plus Fiat adds up to something like a global contender. Either one apart, not so much. And so I think the question would come down to what is the state of their relationship after they actually go public? What are Fiat's plans with respect to Chrysler? I don't think it's an obvious buy, just because they don't quite have the scale of a Ford or a GM. And they aren't thriving in quite the same way. But at the same time, the Fiat overhaul of Chrysler's products has worked out really well. Chrysler's latest trucks, the Jeep Grand Cherokee and so forth, are quite nice. So I think it's a big open question. I would be inclined to stay away from it, but it's possible that events could evolve in a way where I might decide it would look more like a buy. So I think we're going to have to wait and see.
Okay, next headline now. September U.S. auto sales And as if talking about the sales number each month isn't thrilling enough, today we'll actually get to talk about our anticipation of the numbers coming out. But it actually, though, is very interesting because after months of increases, at least one analyst, Jesse Toprak of TrueCar.com, is saying that U.S. auto sales will be down in September. John, is he right? What's going on here?
Well, he isn't. Just in the last half hour before we started this taping, two of his competitors or compatriots, Alec Gutierrez and Kelly Blue Book and Jessica Caldwell at Edmunds, both came out with predictions of a small drop for auto sales in the U.S. in September. And of course, we'll have the full results next week on the 1st of October. But if they're down, this would snap a 27-month streak of gains. And this has been a big sort of push for the economy, for the U.S. economy, all these auto sales. But all of them say there are a few factors at work here, and some of them are not so much to worry about. Some of them are just, calendar math. This September 2013, has 2 fewer of what they call selling days than September of 2012. By selling days, we mean basically that dealers are closed on Sundays. Most auto dealers are closed on Sundays. Many are closed on holidays and so forth, so we don't count those as selling days. Jessica Caldwell at Edmunds points out that the actual daily selling rate is a little higher this year than last year, so not too much to worry about. Some of the lower volumes in September might also have to do just with the timing of Labor Day. If they have sales leading up to Labor Day, a lot of that actually happened in August. August's numbers were great. Maybe some of those were actually kind of September sales in another year. And there is some evidence that sales may have slowed a little bit, though. Jesse Toprak says he thinks that turmoil in the financial markets has made some buyers, and this would probably include corporate fleet buyers as well, a little cautious right now, just waiting to see where the economic winds go.
And so if we look at Ford and we look at General Motors, we don't have any idea yet, like those specific companies may be up or down.
Well, they throw out some ballpark estimates here. It looks pretty good for Ford. It looks pretty good for Honda. It depends on who you ask. Toprak and Gutierrez see Honda pulling out a small gain. Toprak and Caldwell think Ford will show a gain. Gutierrez thinks Toyota and Nissan will do a little better than Ford. Most everybody else agrees that most everybody else is going to be down, though. Jessica Caldwell, who has been pretty accurate from time to time, sees Ford up 5%. If you've got the market down almost 4%, that's a pretty big market share gain. So that would be nice for Ford, and it would be interesting to see sort of what's behind that. Is that more powerful pickup sales? Are there other things catching on, or what's going on? We'll find out next week, one way or another.
Okay, final headline now from automotive news. BMW, which practically invented the idea of rear-wheel drive sports sedans, is planning to launch an inexpensive front-wheel drive car, and that follows Mercedes-Benz' new affordable front-wheel drive sedan, the CLA, and that brings up an interesting point now. Are the German luxury brands going too far down market?
Well, that's an interesting question, Rex. BMW does build a little car called the 1 Series right now, but it's rear-wheel drive, keeping with, the whole ultimate driving machine heritage. This is what BMW built their bread and butter on, luxury sports sedans. Rear-wheel drive is sporty in the enthusiast mind, and front-wheel drive not so much, necessarily. But BMW Insider told AutoWeek that this will be an important pillar in the future 1 Series lineup, particularly in the US and China, where sales of small premium brand 4-door sedans are on the rise. So they think they need to really hit this market. And again, as you said, this follows the new front-wheel drive Mercedes that's coming, the CLA sedan, as well as the Audi A3, which we usually see as all-wheel drive, but is actually built on a front-wheel drive platform. Likewise, this new BMW will be available as all-wheel drive, Insider say, but the basic levels will be front-wheel drive, and it will be a front-wheel drive architecture, as we say, not rear-wheel drive. The platform for this thing will be shared with the all-new Mini. BMW, of course, owns the Mini brand, and this platform, the first appearance of it, will be the all-new Mini. That will be shown at the LA Auto Show in November, we hear. And this new front-wheel drive lineup of BMW 1 Series is set to come out for the 2017 model year. And the reports say they'll have 3-cylinder engines, 4-cylinder engines. Don't bet on the 3 cylinders coming to the US, but we'll see. Possibly also a hybrid. So yeah, it is an interesting move. And the question becomes, at what point do you devalue the brand? We hear some other luxury brands like Cadillac is saying they're not going to go there. They're not going to go a size smaller than what would be their equivalent of the BMW 3 Series. They don't want that market. But of course, Cadillac is part of GM, and GM can cover that market with, Chevys and Buicks. So, whereas BMW is a smaller company. All they have is Mini on one end and Rolls-Royce on the other end, and around their BMW lineup. So how far can they go? I don't know. I think it's an interesting experiment. I'm not sure if I were a Mercedes or BMW shareholder, a Daimler or BMW shareholder, I'd be too excited about this. On the one hand, the volumes will go up. On the other hand, and that will probably drive a near-term gain in profits for both of them because these will be profitable products. On the other hand, what are you doing to the brand long-term? And it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm not sure how this is going to play out yet.
We've had interesting discussions here in the office. Tesla has started at the high end, the luxury end, and they plan to work their way down. Apple even now is coming out with cheaper iPhones. So it seems to be something that a lot of companies are studying right now. And you're right, it is very interesting.
Yes and no. When Apple came out with a somewhat cheaper iPhone, but it wasn't really a whole lot cheaper. Apple's view seems to be that they need a certain level of technology to offer what they think of as the experience that their customers want, and they can't really get below the new 5C now to deliver that experience. You might say that's not far from what Cadillac is saying, where to deliver a Cadillac experience, the ATS is the entry-level model, the small sedan that they released last year. That's about the size of a BMW 3 Series. They're not going to go any smaller. Likewise, Tesla's talking about a mass market car, but their mass market car, when you get Elon Musk to talk a little more about it, seems to be sort of the size and shape and price of, once again, a BMW 3 Series. I don't know that Tesla would see themselves going much below that, especially as they've put such good effort into and had such good success with establishing themselves as a premium brand here.
Okay, extremely interesting. Time now for that segment of the show where John and I go under the hood, actually deep under the hood, with a closer look at some of the big stories in the auto world. And for this week, the reviews are out for Cadillac's redesigned 2014 CTS, and they're mostly glowing. Looks like another strong new product for General Motors. Pricing, by the way, is also out, and boy, prepare to pony up significantly more than you would have for the 2013 model. John, some interesting developments here, and we'll touch on pricing in a moment, but first, the vehicles. You are a big Cadillac guy. What do you think of these new vehicles?
Well, the CTS has gone now. This is the third generation of it. When it came out in 2003, it was the first sort of rear-wheel drive car. Speaking of rear-wheel drive cars, the Cadillac was really kind of aiming at the Germans. And I would say the first one was pretty good. The second one was very good, and this new third one looks like it's great. It looks like it's no excuses. It really is. You can line it right up next to a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class, and it's competitive and might even have selling points and advantages over them. So it looks like, after years of work and some big investments, GM is really getting to where they had targeted with Cadillac. This thing looks like a winner in many respects. It's bigger than the outgoing car. It's more precisely matched to the size of the German rivals. It's much improved in a lot of ways. It's longer, it's lower, it's lighter was the catchphrase at the introduction.
And you want one.
I'm sorry, what?
And you want one.
I want the CTS-V. We haven't seen that next year. That's the super high performance version. But, that's when we have to get into the pricing discussion here because these are a lot more expensive than the outgoing models.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the pricing. What are you seeing here, what we might have to pay for these things?
Well, depending on trim, the new CTS is anywhere from $6,000 to $16,000 more than the outgoing model. And as I said, we haven't even seen, much less heard about pricing on the top-of-the-line CTS-V yet. The hot package right now is the 420 horsepower V-Sport. This is a new Cadillac line that slots below their sort of all-conquering V-Series. The V-Series are extreme high-performance cars. These are sort of the sportiest versions of the mainstream car. But the new V-Sport version of the CTS is the hot package. The reviewers are all saying this is a real gem. It's a lot of fun to drive. But, it'll cost you. It starts at $59,900 and it can go up over $70,000. Now, here's the key. That's right in line with its closest rival over at BMW, which would be the 550i. That starts at $63,900. But for comparison, the outgoing CTS-V, which is a 556 horsepower supercar disguised as a four-door luxury sedan, starts at a little over $64,000. So, what'll the new CTS-V cost? Well, let's put it this way. The BMW M5, which is their version of this, starts at $90,000. So, that's a big jump up right there if they actually go there. I would expect them to drop the CTS-V starting price somewhere at least in the mid-80s, but we'll see when it comes out next year. But in any event, these are all big steps up in pricing. On the other hand, this is a much improved product, and they've brought their pricing close to what BMW and Mercedes and Audi are getting. They feel, with this product, they're right in that market. They're offering that kind of value, that kind of quality. They should be able to command that kind of price. And to which I, as the analyst, say, well, let's see if they get it.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
And if I can drop in an interesting point to me about Tesla's Model S and those who scoffed at that price, saying it's an overpriced toy, but this is the market they're playing in. High-end consumers who crave that performance and crave the luxury, and the Model S is luxurious.
Yeah, the Model S is actually probably at least a half size up from the CTS. There's another Cadillac coming in a couple of years, which will be the next size up. That will be the car that competes with like the Mercedes S-Class and the BMW 7 Series. But those cars start, in the mid-60s or higher, and that's where the Model S starts. So yeah, they too are thinking in the same line. They're thinking in terms of sort of the German luxury standard bearers and how they stack up against them. Of course, Tesla is more of a radical alternative, but it is true that people were saying when the Model S first came out, people were saying this car has no competitors, and I made the argument over and over. Sure, it does. It competes with the Lexus that the people in this class currently drive, that the BMW 5 Series, the BMW 7 Series, the Mercedes E-Class, these kinds of cars. As people think about, will I buy this for my next car or something else, it competes with the other cars in the price range, and those are some exceptionally nice, exceptionally well turned out cars, and Tesla has executed to a high standard there.
Okay. Thanks, John. And let's move on now to our fun and final segment. We'll do something a little different each week here in this final segment, but today, one irresponsible prediction from each of us where we take a mighty swing at the future of the auto industry. Sometimes we'll connect, sometimes we will whiff mightily. And I'll go first today, John. I want to refer to the self-driving revolution and say that it will be even bigger than we're envisioning now. Nissan, for example, says it will have multiple self-driving models out by 2020. Plenty of technology is already in effect now. Cadillac has some interesting stuff out. Ford, Toyota, and others are all working on it. So we already have that as a baseline, but I'm saying it's going to be even bigger. I predict some driverless delivery trucks within 10 years. And I also think that if they're not careful, companies like FedEx, UPS could be disrupted by a low-cost, highly efficient competitor. I think about how Amazon came in and disrupted the retail industry. So, John, I don't know if you have any thoughts on my silly prediction, but what do you think?
Well, what I hear from folks in the industry is that the obstacle towards self-driving vehicles is not so much the technology. We have a lot of the technology. It's the rules, it's the laws. If a self-driving car is pulled over for speeding, who gets the tickets? And more seriously, if it's an accident, who do you sue? So I think there has to be a lot of thought put around sort of the regulatory framework that these vehicles of all kinds, whether they're UPS trucks going interstate, 18-wheelers, or whether they're Teslas or Cadillacs or anything else here, and I think that's going to happen. But I think more than the technology, that's going to be what holds things up. So we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, I think your scenario is certainly possible, but there is some distance from here to there, and we'll just have to see how it plays out.
And what about Google with its self-driving technology? It has working models now that are not yet out on the road, but what if they can't find a good partner? Do you think they could ever be an automaker?
I think Google says somewhat glibly, well, we'll just make cars. Making cars is harder than it looks. Tesla found that out, I think. I think they came out with some great promises and then had to go back and say, all right, well, Elon Musk, fortunately being a smart guy, went and hired some real experts. He hired some folks from Volkswagen and from some other automakers and said, all right, let's help us figure out how to do a real auto development program. And they spent a lot of money, and I think Google would have to spend a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of time to get into a business where the margins maybe aren't what they're used to in their other businesses. So I don't know if they'll actually go there. They might talk about going there, but I think it's more likely that they would try to partner with somebody. But again, the question becomes who? Cadillac says they have what they call the Super Cruise, which is their cruise control system that's like a cruise control on steroids. It's like halfway way to self-driving cars. And they'll have that in a couple years. All the technology is coming together for them. Likewise Mercedes, likewise Nissan, likewise Tesla, likewise probably Ford and most of the other big automakers. So who's the obvious partner? I don't know. To go back to what we talked about earlier, they may get to somebody who's, you know, a little bit further down the technology pecking order. Someone like Chrysler might welcome Google into the building. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that once they look closely at it, though, they will look at the idea of actually building cars on their own and becoming an automaker and find it to be a little daunting. Maybe not, but we'll see.
All right, John, let's move along to your big prediction now.
Well, we've been talking about Cadillac today, so my shameless, irresponsible prediction is this. And I have to give a little background. Over the summer, Cadillac showed a concept car that is one of the previews that they've let us see of where they're going with their high-end luxury cars. This car was called the El Mirage. It was really a take on the idea of an old El Dorado, a big two-door coupe. And it was a beautiful car, and there was a lot to notice about it. But what I found really interesting was the engine was a version of this twin-turbo V6 we've been talking about, the one that's in the CTS V Sport, only taken out to 8 cylinders. And as a V8, it's 4.5 liters with twin turbos. And I thought that was interesting that they built a V8 off of this new architecture, which is very different from GM's other V8s. It's a dual overhead cam architecture, very different from, you know, the Chevy V8s and so forth. And what I thought when I saw that is, a 4.5 liter V8 calculates to a 6 liter V12. Mercedes has a V12, Audi has a 12-cylinder engine, BMW has a V12. 6 liter V12 is a great size. That's the size of Aston Martin's V12s. They make lovely engines. I bet, my irresponsible prediction is that somewhere in Warren, Michigan, in one of GM's engine labs, there's a Cadillac V12, a 6-liter Cadillac V12. Whether they build it, I don't know, but I will not be surprised if they do, because if they're really benchmarking BMW and Mercedes at the high end, which is where the big money per car is, you know, the Germans are offering 12-cylinder engines. I will not be surprised if come 2016, 2017, Cadillac offers one too. And I think that'll be very, very exciting for the American auto industry.
I'm betting these 12 cylinders don't get 50 miles to the gallon either.
No, I bet they don't. But you know, as we talk about things like future Corvettes and so forth, imagine a hybrid like Porsche just released a car like this. It costs a zillion dollars, but it's a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid that has a good amount of power running on electric. But when you floor it, the big V8 turns on, just boom, turns on, and all of a sudden you go from having 200 horsepower to drive on the highway to 700 horsepower to run down that Ferrari on the racetrack, you know? And I could see this kind of technology making its way into more and more high performance and high-end luxury cars, where the car is a plug-in hybrid, but it has a big, impressive gasoline engine that you can call on, but only when you really need it. Speaking as someone who drives a car with a big V8, the Cadillac CTS V, most of the time I don't need the horsepower in that car if I'm taking my kids to baseball practice, you know, but sometimes it's a lot of fun to have that. Sometimes it's helpful to have that. And you know, to have the idea of a hybrid would be that you had it when you needed it, but you weren't burning all that gas when you weren't. So I think this is something that could happen in time, and I think it's a direction the industry could go in, and we'll see if it happens.
All right, John, thank you very much. Now this ride is over. We're out of gas. For John Rosevear, I'm Rex Moore. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.